So I saw I Know What You Did Last Summer last night, and this is going to be, I guess, my all in all review of it. Now, this movie is gonna be kind of hard to not give a little bit of spoilers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give the spoilers at the very end to kind of give away like the killer and things of that nature. So if you don't want to hear that, I'll put a disclaimer up for when I do it, so you guys won't be like mad for when I tell you who the quote unquote killer is. But before that, the non spoilers. This movie takes place exactly 28 years after the events of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which came out in 1997. Now, in this rendition, we have a cast of new crew who are pretty much a carbon copy of the characters from the 97 version of what Ryan Phillippe, Freddie Prinze Jr., Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And in this rendition, we have a new cast and crew of right here, as you see them. And they're pretty much, a lot of them really aren't really known, to be honest with you. This is probably like their first pretty much big movies. But all in all, cast is they're assembled. They're having a good fun on 4th of July. They go to the edge of a cliff and they're messing around in the street. And one of the characters, Teddy, messes around and ends up causing a man to crash and hit the cliff. And before they saved him, he went over the cliff. A year later, a guy comes back and writes a letter sending it to Danica saying, "I know she did last summer," and a slew of them end up obviously quote unquote dying. In the midst of this, they now must hook up with Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character and Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, Julia and Ray, to quote unquote find this new copy carbon killer from someone who's haunted them from their past for almost 30 years. Now, the thing that I will say about this movie that I did like was actually the cast that they brought together for this was actually pretty decent. But did we need this movie? Absolutely not. I thought that it was, even though this quote unquote is essentially the third movie into this quote unquote franchise, because a lot of me may not remember the I Know What You Did Last Summer '97, but then there was also a sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which also starred Brandy. And this one was also kind of like, it was weird because the things I like about it was almost like a carbon copy of the original. It's like they took implements of the original in the exact same city, the exact same town, and almost the exact same thing happens to pretty much a carbon copy of the people from 1997. I mean, like, look at this original cast, and then you bring on the other cast. One second. It's pretty much like a carbon copy of the crew from '97 minus one additional character. So it was just interesting to me that they came out with this movie like it really wasn't needed. And but all in all, but my favorite character, you got that character that you root for that you just pray doesn't die. This her, Danica, played by her name was in the movies. Her name was Danica, but her real name is Madeline Celine, I believe. She was fine. That was the one girl I was like, oh, please don't die, please don't kill me. And my homeboy was like, ooh, she cute. She was fine. Yeah, that was like the one character I was just like, run, bitch, run. Don't let him kill you. All that, like that was me. I was her cheerleader. But it did have a solid cast, and to me, the kills was the best part of the movie. Seeing how these people, how these characters are going to be dismembered, killed, and who are going to be the collateral damage to me, which is the best part of these slasher films. But it's like, this movie doesn't take anything different from any other slasher movie, from Scream to any other movie that you can really think of. Now, here's the quote unquote negative, and this is where the spoilers are gonna start. So if you guys don't want to know who the killer is, I guess you kind of should exit out, kind of like right about now. Just dropping that in there. It's kind of hard to not give away this movie to say who the killer was, but it was two essentially people, like how, and I didn't like that because of how they got that from Scream. In the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, it was the guy who they actually killed off a hit and run, and in this one the guy fell off the cliff, but he actually died, and it was a person who was dating him who didn't know that was him was in the her name for Sam. She was in this cast of crew with them, which was their buddies, and she found out that the guy who died was the person she was dealing with, and so she took revenge on the crew and tried to kill them, i.e., adding in Freddie Prinze Jr., who actually did the quote unquote killing. So that's one thing I didn't like about it is that you took the original cast member and became him a killer because he was quote unquote dealing with his trauma. That's how he dealt with it, becoming a killer. And it'd be like they stretched it at the end. Like I was like, I can't get with that. And Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, she was solid in this movie. And then at the end, you guys should say, because there is a teasing of a sequel because Brandy is in the end credit scene. So, like I said, they didn't need to make this movie. Uh, it was okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? Besides seeing Danica's fine self, or, excuse me, I mean, besides seeing Madeline's fine self, to me, this was the best part of the movie, looking at her fine self. Everything else was. And hold up, one other person. Mr. Tyreek plays Teddy, and him and Danica were an item at one point in time. But to me, he was the MVP of the movie. Like, he was kind of like the Ryan Phillippe character from 1997, the kind of rich kid. But I give it to him. Like, he had a little fight scene with the killer, and he was the only one that really put up like a quote unquote fight. Like, you know, he's like, I ain't going out like no bitch. If you gonna get me, you gonna have to work for this. So he was like the main. He was like the asshole character, but he also like backed his shit up at the same time. But like all in all, like I said, like this movie didn't have to be made, and especially almost 28 years later, almost 30 years later from the original. But that's my take on it. I mean, I give this movie like 6.5 out of 10 if I had to rate it. I mean, you know, if you ain't got nothing else to do this weekend, just go ahead and see it, especially if you've seen the original.